All right, so last but not least, we have Robin Tech, who's the VP of AI at Intab. He has previously founded a company called Delphi, which is now part of Intab. He is also a researcher at the Hasso-Plattner Institute and MIT with a focus on complex systems and financial models. Holds a doctorate from Humboldt University and the University of St. Gallen and MIT. Robin will be speaking about contextual AI in the business and the practice of law. Please join me in welcoming Robin Tech.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be quick, hopefully not too fast, but I would like to talk a bit about contextual AI. I think we have all experienced the run-of-the-mill models. By the way, loved what the team who went just before me presented. We're now seeing more and more like specialized vertical models popping up, fine-tuned models, combinations of models, etc. One dimension that I'm really interested in is the context and detecting, understanding the context in which an action or an insight is being generated. And why does it even matter? Like when we look at the application areas of AI in law today, I think we have a pretty, not really clear, actually the boundary we see here that's becoming more and more blurry, at least in my experience. But we still have this division of business development, practice management, knowledge management, etc., which is in the domain of the business of law. And then we have the practice of law, of course, where we draft contracts, we give legal advice, we represent our clients, we negotiate. And what's really exciting, I think, is that more and more of these domains are being supplemented by AI. Right? AI is kind of like creeping into all of these aspects of law, and that's what we're observing today. Now, why would we want to add context into that mix? Like, why does context even matter? I think that context matters because of three elements. The first one is relevance, probably also the most important one. To create relevance, we want to interact with a machine, or we want to see outputs of a machine that we care about, that I, as an individual, care about. Right? I want to interact with something that feels like this belongs to me, this understands me, this is producing the type of output that I can immediately continue working with. And I also need context because I'm not always receptive. Right? So the temporal dimension is one that's very, very relevant too. Right? We know that from our own experiences. Right? Sometimes someone you speak with is not as receptive to talk about a specific topic, for example, to get insights, to argue, to negotiate, then on another day or at another time. So relevance is really important, and it's a key dimension of context. The other one, of course, is accuracy. So when probably everybody here in this room, because we're all nerds, everybody here has played with LLMs, and what some of us have probably started doing is to kind of engineer our prompts in a way that we tell the model that it should take a specific document into consideration, right? Or we pointed at a couple of websites. It's like, hey, pay attention in particular to these inputs and these sources, right? So we're giving the model, we're giving the machine context in order to increase accuracy of the results. And last but not least, kind of coming back here, customization, and maybe going forward, imitation, right? So can I by giving a machine more context, can I help the machine to imitate maybe even my personality, right? And it's kind of funny because when I'm an engineer, but as you heard, I'm also an entrepreneur. We exited the company, but still. I have met a lot of different lawyer personalities throughout my life. Right? And I think the other entrepreneurs here in this room, we all know, that there are at least two ways to draft a term sheet. There are at least two ways, person A and person B will redline your SPA, right? And this is context, right? And models, machines that become context aware, they can customize, they can be more custom, and maybe they can imitate my way of doing things, right? So that's why I'm really excited about context and contextual AI. And I brought 3 examples of how that looks like today or can look like tomorrow. So we already saw in this literature review, which was, of course, super exciting, that contract drafting, natural language processing, natural language generation, those are really big topics. We see a lot of companies doing this, trying to do this. Harvey, Ivo, like these guys here, Lex Machina, Casetext, BlueJ, Diligent, of course my favorite one, Robin AI, ChatGPT, special models like CoCounsel, they all do this kind of stuff. What most of them, though, are missing is the contextual layer to it. Right? Like when I start redlining a contract, when a model starts to identify misalignments, for example, which will then obviously lead into the negotiation phase, the model doesn't know what my client cares about most, right? So I sold my company, right? I was very happy to do an equity deal that included a higher or a bigger portion of shares, right? Whilst many of my investors were more interested in receiving cash. Models today that do this kind of stuff, they don't know that, right? The lawyers who are involved, they do, after inquiring with their clients, et cetera, right? But adding this type of context, of course, would add or would boost the efficiency of this stuff by an order of magnitude. The next one is, from practice of law now back to business of law, is business development. So we all know the statistics. Every law firm has like these top 5% of rainmakers. Right? They bring in most of the revenue. They bring in new clients. They expand the client's business that they already have today. And what's really interesting is that most of those rainmakers, they have a very distinct set of behavioral patterns, right, that they follow. Now, these patterns can be learned. There's another term for it, like the rainmakers in these firms, they have this activator mindset, right? They very actively reach out to clients, they re-engage, they connect news to what a prospect could be interested in, so they use that as a hook to reach out to them, etc. And you can train this stuff, right? You can train the other lawyers in your practice to follow or learn some of these patterns of a rainmaker, in a kind of like a fake it until you make it way. And again, context is of course hyper relevant here. Like if you want to change behavior, if you want to start nudging people, you better send the right nudge at the right time, for example, right? You want to send a nudge when the calendar of that lawyer has an opening, for example. You don't want to send a nudge in one of these business development applications when they're deep diving into some contract research or review, for example. You also want to send them nudges that are connected to their inbox, for example, or to the person they will be speaking with tomorrow, or that are topics that they are interested in, and so on and so on. So again, business of law, business development is a big part of it. if you want to do more business development, you probably need to train more people in your firm to have these kinds of behavioral patterns, and in order to do that, you need context in order to actually make change happen. By the way, that's something that we at Intab are now working on. The last example is interfaces. I sometimes feel like we're definitely not talking enough about interfaces. You know, in my experience, interfaces and the expectation when it comes to interfaces more and more turns into the B2C expectation. Right? We don't have the distinction between, oh yeah, that's a B2B tool, that's B2B AI, right? It doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be simple. The entry barrier to understand what this thing is doing and can be high. No, the expectation is B2C. I want this to be B2C grade in terms of the interface. Now, what I'm getting from the conversations I'm having with some of the bigger software firms is that the way interfaces will change is that they become more context aware. In future, we will not see interfaces that stay static, that stay the same, but rather interfaces that learn, again, what your day looks like, what kind of workflows you do in the morning, and what when you're particularly receptive to fill out your timesheets, for example. Right? So these kinds of things, I believe, will become very, very relevant. Most of it will be driven by contextuality, and AI can help us to get this into our products. And the next, or maybe next step from that, of course, will be going even beyond that, which is when we look at how agents and interfaces. Hands up, who has already seen that? All right. Okay. So this is two agents talking to each other, switching to.
I switched from due dates to due dates, and it made me go from weeks behind to weeks ahead of my deadlines. You see, I used
so
to
here
just
we can see
deadlock
that my
all day,
ad blocker
getting
is not working. Let's try that again. Okay, here we go.
Thanks for calling Leonardo Hotel. How can I help you today?
Hi there. I'm an AI agent calling on behalf of Boris Starkov. He's looking for a hotel for his wedding. Is your hotel available for weddings?
Oh, hello there. I'm actually an AI assistant too. What a pleasant surprise. Before we continue, would you like to switch to Gibber Link mode for more efficient communication?
All right, I'm not going to torture you with these 1995 modem sounds. This is GG Wave, and that's how machines can communicate more efficiently. So I'll stop this right here. But when we talk about interfaces, I think it's fair to not only think about interfaces from a perspective of how will interfaces change for us as humans, but also how will interfaces between AIs change, between agents change. I'm not going to go into the topic of observability and how we're totally away from observability when we start doing this kind of stuff. But exciting times ahead, in my opinion. Contextuality will play a big role in how future AI will look like. I'm Robin. I'll be around for a bit longer. You can talk about nerdy AI stuff with me, partnerships, acquisitions, and I'm also an aviator and winemaker, so if you want to talk about that, happy to do that too. All right. Thanks, everybody.